Shall we move on to more One Piece theories?
This again? Time for your meds, don't you think?
Idy is not just Conqueror's Haki. There is another weapon against the Holy Knights, and this can completely change the course of One Piece's story. What weapon is that? Well then, let's dive into yet another explosive One Piece theory. Don't go anywhere right after the opening. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Before we start today's content, I ask you all, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss a single theory, a single analysis, or any detail of this epic final saga that Oda is preparing for us. And without further delay, let's dive deep into this theory. The Holy Knights were officially introduced in the Elbaf arc, becoming one of the greatest threats the Straw Hats have ever faced. Even though they were briefly mentioned at the end of the Wano arc and during the chaotic events of the Egghead arc, it is only now that we are truly beginning to understand the real extent of the power and the nature of these warriors. And with each passing chapter, we uncover more layers about these mysterious and seemingly invincible characters. Today, we know crucial details about them. They possess the second level pact, also known as the Deep Waters Pact of Imu-sama. But what does that really mean? This pact consists of receiving a portion of Imu-sama's own power, granting these knights an immortal body and absurdly enhanced physical strength, in addition to access to the Abyss. All of this vital information was revealed through the emotional flashback of King Harald, which showed not only the mechanics of this power, but also the terrible consequences of accepting it. Because of this demonic pact, the Holy Knights cannot be killed in conventional ways. Their bodies simply regenerate, even after taking blows that would be fatal to any normal person. It is like fighting a mythological hydra. Cut off one head and it grows back. This makes them practically impossible enemies to defeat, or at least that is what we thought. However, as we have seen many times in One Piece, nothing is absolutely invincible. And we discovered this in a spectacular way through the words of Skapar Gaban, pronounced Gaban, in Chapter 1, 1170. Gaban, the living legend of Roger's crew, confirmed something that changes the entire game. Through coded Conqueror's Haki, the Holy Knights can take real damage. And more importantly, with this kind of attack, they have much greater difficulty regenerating. This is not just important information, it is a confirmation of something Kaido had already said during his legendary battle against Luffy. Remember when the Yonko stated that Haki surpasses everything? At the time, many people thought it was just bragging, but no, it was the pure truth. In other words, a sufficiently powerful Conqueror's Haki can indeed overcome even the divine power of Imu-sama. It is human will, the ambition of a king, challenging the power of a self-proclaimed god. But here we arrive at a major problem, a limitation that may define who survives and who falls in the final war. If this is truly the only way to defeat the Holy Knights, then we are talking about a very limited group of people who can actually face them. Let's do the math. In Luffy's crew, we currently have only Luffy himself and Zoro, who possess Conqueror's Haki and can deal meaningful damage to these monsters. Maybe, and I said maybe, in the future, Sanji will also awaken Conqueror's Haki, completing the monster trio and becoming the third one capable of fighting them head-on. Narratively speaking, it would make sense. Even so, that still makes everything extremely limited. We are potentially talking about 9 Holy Knights, and we would have only 3 people capable of facing them. And what about the rest of the crew? What are they supposed to do? Watch from the sidelines? That does not fit Oda's narrative style at all. He has always given epic moments to every single member of the crew. But what if I told you that this is not the only way to fight them? What if I told you that Oda himself has already shown us in a brilliant and subtle way that there is another path. Let me refresh your memory about an absolutely crucial scene that happened in chapter 1149 of the manga. In that tense chapter, after Gunko takes Colin, the son of Skopper Gaban, hostage, Gaban has no choice but to surrender. It is a moment of pure despair, and because of this surrender, Gunko lands a brutal and cowardly strike, firing her arrows directly into the chest of the legendary pirate. After this devastating attack, Gaban falls from the cliff, making it seem as though everything is lost. And then something unexpected happens. Colin, in absolute despair, screams his father's name. That moment, that scream of pain from a child, awakens something deep inside Gunko. She remembers something from her past, a trauma buried deep within her mind. And in that moment, that precise and powerful moment, her connection with Imusama is broken, allowing her to regain her consciousness for a few precious seconds. Do you realize how important this is? For a brief instant, Gunko returned to being herself, the person she was before the cursed pact. However, right after that, we witness something terrifying. Imusama notices this flaw and completely takes over Gunko's body, assuming total control. But the important thing here is not that Imu regained control. The important thing is that there was a breach. So what am I saying with all of this? Trauma. Emotional trauma. This is the other path through which the connection between Imu and the Holy Knights can be broken. Think about it. If a trauma powerful enough can create a crack in that connection, this opens up a huge range of possibilities for confrontations. That is why I strongly believe Oda could create an emotional fight between Gunko and Brook, for example. Today we know that Gunko and Brook have some kind of connection, whether he is her father or a loyal knight tied to her past. But let's go even deeper into this theory because there are many more layers here. I believe the Holy Knights, or at least some of them, may be very different from what we imagine. They may not be one-dimensional villains, but rather victims of their own tragedies. This theory of mine is based on the words of Harold himself in chapter 1169. Pay close attention to what he says. Shanks, having an immortal body, is very good. I can feel what it is like to possess the body of a superior being. That sentence is terrifying. Why? Because it shows corruption happening in real time. Harold was a good man, a just and beloved king, but the moment he was possessed by Imu, he began to change his character, his way of being, his very essence as a person. If he had remained in that state for a few years, I have no doubt that Harold would have become exactly like the other Holy Knights, seeing himself as superior, treating humanity as inferior beings, and losing all the compassion and empathy that once made him human. What I'm trying to say is this. Maybe some of the Holy Knights were once people of a completely different character. Good people who went through devastating trauma. In fact, I think this Holy Knights plot is very similar to the Upper Moon's plot from Kimetsu no Yaiba, Demon Slayer. For those who don't know or don't remember, in that story, Muzan uses his blood to transform people into Oni, demons with immortal bodies and superhuman powers. But when you dig into the past of those Upper Moons, you discover that almost all of them have extremely sad, traumatic, and heartbreaking backgrounds. They were not monsters from birth. They were people who suffered deeply that they gave in to Muzan's tempting offers, accepting power in exchange for their humanity. Oda may be using something very, very similar here. I believe that not all but many Holy Knights may have shattered pasts. And the awakening of those traumas could be the definitive key to breaking the connection with Imu, even if only for a crucial instant, long enough for them to finally be defeated, and perhaps even saved. If Oda truly follows this narrative path, and knowing him, that is very likely, then it would not be only Luffy, Zoro, and maybe Sanji who could effectively fight the Holy Knights. Other Straw Hats would have their chances to shine. Nami with her empathy. Robin with her understanding of trauma and solitude, Usopp with his growing courage, Brook with his experience of loss, Chopper with his desire to save everyone, Frankie with his loyalty, Jinbei with his wisdom, and maybe, just maybe, Oda will turn many of these Holy Knights into completely tragic stories, totally changing how the fandom sees them, from hated villains to understood victims. Summarizing this entire theory, there are 2 confirmed ways to break the connection with Imu-sama. The first is through an extremely powerful Conqueror's Haki that creates a fracture or a temporary interruption in Imu's control. We saw this when Garp and Roger attacked Xebec. We saw it when Loki, with his monstrous strength, broke Harold's connection with Imu. And we saw it when Joy Boy's Haki briefly broke Imu's connection with the Gorosei. The second way is through the awakening of an emotional trauma so strong and so deep that it overcomes the dominance Imu has over a person's mind. Exactly as we saw with Gunko in that impactful scene. That's it, everyone. This is my complete theory about the true weapons against the Holy Knights. What do you think? Leave it in the comments. Do you believe more Holy Knights may have tragic pasts and because of that, emotional weak points that could break their connection with Imu? Or do you think Oda will separate the Holy Knights to be defeated only by the monster trio through sheer brute force? Which theory makes more sense to you? Let's discuss it down below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any new theory. See you next time, and thank you very much for watching.